Hello and welcome. My name is Olga Chwa, and we're gathering tonight for an Astroyoga session, combining some of the wisdom of astrology, the astrology of today, of this moment, with movements from very gentle and very traditional yoga. Special focus is on the legs and the neck today, so as to honor that the moon is in Taurus, and Taurus is what rules the neck in medical astrology. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe to support this channel. I'm preparing for a little bit of movement as promised for the feet and the knees, the hips, and a special focus. We'll get to the whole body, hang out with the neck a little bit, and then wind that back around to the breath. If you are on the floor, you might choose to stay lying down. If you're on a couch, even if your knees are supported or bent, or one of them wants to lift up, those are options. You can do what I'm going to show you sitting. Legs can be straight. Again, they could be in their comfortable positions. And you have the option of being seated. And with the seat, for the lower parts of the body, by all means, let the back rest. And then as we get into the upper parts, it might be more comfortable to be on the edge. So you'll make those decisions. You'll find your way. Awareness of the feet, wherever they are in space. You're noticing the feet, beginning with the toes, closing and opening them. It's these tiny movements, getting the body warmed up from those lowest, most points, those joints farthest from the head and the eyes, moving the toes forward and back 3 or 4 times, and then separating the big toes from the crew, getting those little toes to move in the opposite direction a few times, playing that game. Can you spread them out? And from the toes moving into the ankles. So depending on where you are, that might involve lifting your feet. It might be 1 foot at a time to really get that focus, especially if there's been any sort of achiness or injury, or the ankles are feeling swollen for some reason. From the forward and back, we move into a rotation, drawing little circles with the ankles, round and round in one way, and then the other way. You might be practicing both together. You might be dividing them out one at a time. However you're doing that with awareness. You're doing this as a game to feel. And from the circles, let's do infinity symbols. Can you draw these horizontal figure 8s? Wiggling the toes up and around in one direction and then reversing them and going up and around the other direction. Maybe a normal figure 8, normal, upright figure 8. See all those little movements. And this is what the ankles need more than anything. I've known many folks who've had ankle injuries, and they, by and large, are assigned one main physical therapy practice. It's to draw the alphabet with the foot. So if you are experiencing some ankle weakness, ankle recovery, you've sprained something, find those shapes and keep it slow. Keep that awareness kind and gentle, not pushing the leg through anything that's sharp, keeping that exploratory and gentle. Let's combine some of those movements, getting fancy here. Toes and ankles. So the toes lift and then the ankles lift, and then the toes bend down and the ankles bend down. So it's like this Barbie kind of high heel shoe position that flattens out, and then this sort of claw-shaped foot that comes down. And we've got a double practice there of awareness. We're going to reverse that. So I'm doing on one foot, I'm going to do it on the other foot. So that's that toes lift and the whole foot comes up, and the toes fold down and the whole foot goes down, up and up, down and down. And this is a direction, so this can reverse. Let's go back to the first side. This time the toes are going to bend down while the ankle lifts up. And then the toes pop up for the foot to go down. And the curling of the toes, so it's like you're pulling something up with the toes, like you're picking up a blanket from the floor with your foot. And then going down in that Barbie foot in that high heel shoe position. So pulling that up and ball of the foot down. This comes out of some of the dance training. You might have done something like this if you've ever been in a modern dance class or a ballet class. Getting those 2 directions, that tugging when I got there. hanging there. Tugging and lowering and finding those movements through the joints of the foot and the ankle. And all those muscles, all those even smaller connections, the tendons, the ligaments, they're connected with the fascia like a stocking up the legs. So the more you warm up your feet, the more we get the legs ready for anything else, or the feet ready, the legs will feel so much better and more accessible. So as you wiggle those toes, you challenge yourself to some of those funky movements, give yourself a rest, give yourself a nice few breaths of no effort after all that fancy footwork. Thank you, feet. These great big planets of Jupiter and Neptune are in Pisces now, and Pisces is where the feet are believed to be in that system of medical astrology. And so our immune system is governed by Jupiter, and Neptune is the king of the sea. There's a level of emotional health and well-being in there. So let those feet be tended to and warm as you walk through the world with that support of these immune system and emotional forces. We become aware of the knees. We've got a couple of different things in Capricorn, but more than anything, we're in Capricorn season. The sun is in Capricorn. If you've been organizing things, if you've been making lists and checking resolutions, that might be a phenomenon of the astrology. So the first thing we know about the knees is they open and close, and that's your first line of exploration, is how's the leg moving in terms of a forward and back today? How open does it get? How closed does it get? If you're sitting on a chair, bonus, you've got the leg available. If you're on the floor, you might hold it up and open it and close it to find that closed position and that open position. A few times on the one side. You might even compare from that moment. That might be a pause to say, oh, wow, just the bending makes this side feel more closer to the floor. At least that's true in my body, that even just 5 or 6 openings and bendings, I think that stretch as I open and let the back of the knee there get to its maximum, give it a little tug, a little dull sensation of a stretch there. And that helps it feel closer to the ground. The next thing that the knee can do with its help from the hip is a horizontal movement. So if you're lying down, do find a right angle. And I'll show you the option on the chair if you don't find it yourself. Drawing a little dash, a little minus sign. So the hip is doing part of the rotation, but you're allowing the knee to go to its extremes there. So you're establishing inside and outside points. From that right angle, inside and outside points. The hip is a little more stable in a sitting position, but that can be done with the foot pointing to the ground, right? You got the right angle in a sitting position. So finding that forward and back, that dash might be on the floor, and it's in the right angle that this movement is possible, right? It's straight leg, the knee's not going to have that much accessible movement. And then we put the 4 points together. There's a top point, an outside point, the bottom point, and the inside point. They might be a smaller circumference. You might find a rotation that's a little smaller than all those points, but that's what you're going for. Slowly seeing if you can touch all the points that you just found in one direction and in the opposite direction. Slow as slow can be. And part of the game is keeping the ankle loosey-goosey, along for the ride. This is a movement of the knee with some support from the hip. When you've done one side, give that a breath, a rest, a few moments to just notice what you got there. Anything that happens on one side gets to happen on the other. Reviewing and continuing rotations at the knee. One direction and the other. Slowing it down, especially if there's spots that feel achy, not pushing into the pain, but getting a little more gentle there, maybe even going through that quarter of an hour or 10-minute section of, if it were a clock, right? If your foot was going around the face of a clock, and this part feels a little tight, staying there saying, oh, where can I move to invite more resources here, right? More blood flow, more lymphatic flow, helping those fibers open up, release anything they're holding on to. One side and the other, and then we've got our fancy shapes. Can you draw an infinity symbol or figure 8 with the lower leg, giving the knee this more complicated, more nuanced game, like a bow or an upright 8, playing with these windy, wiggly shapes, and then they switch directions. Whatever you're doing has a flow, it's going to have a reverse. It's going to be able to go the other way. So let the next few moments be a game for you, a game of exploring what the knees are available for, what sort of shapes and loops and ribbons, Celtic knots, illustrations of spaghetti, whatever you got there, drawing it with your feet and then noticing, coming into the stillness to enjoy that, to connect. And part of the game, part of the practice is that between these efforts, between these movements, there's that return to winter. There's that return to soft surrender. And this reminder that there really is nothing you have to do. You might be choosing to move this way because it feels good. It's tending to the garden that is your health and your wellness. But there are days and there are weeks when the garden gets to rest and replenish itself from the natural flow of breath and of weather. So we come into the hips, and if you're on a chair, that hip movement might be a little inside-outside movement, if that feels available and good to you. Keeping the knees in one position, sort of noticing, oh, it's a right angle. I'm going to keep that right angle so that movement is about the hips. And on the floor, similar thing. On the floor, whether it's a sitting position or lying down, bringing the feet towards each other and letting one knee fall open and come back up. The other knee can fall open. That can be reclining position. Feeling into these movements of the hips. If you are lying down and if you want to develop the core strength a little bit, the invitation is to draw a circle with a straight leg, to lift a leg and to do a leg rotation. And that demands some of that musculature of the abdomen. Bending the leg makes it a little easier. Some of that weight is distributed differently. And so that might be a way to explore strengthening. If you are on the floor on your back, the hip rotation is going to engage the psoas muscles, the iliacus, all the hip flexors that connect into the thigh, our thighs here with Mars and Sagittarius, the quadriceps, and some of the little guys in there like pectineus and those guys. So sitting, those circles can be done as lying down. It's going to be core strengthening as well, but with the body upright, that's going to hopefully be a little more available, from the simple movements to circular movements. And the circular movements into wiggly squigglies, figure 8s, and infinity symbols that have directions, that have sides, keeping track of your movement 3 or 4 times in each direction and on both sides, evening it out in your way. Hip movements from the basic to the round to the more complex, like infinity, and then rest, and then noticing what's that done? How's that feel? What's happening in the body? If you're sitting, come to the edge of the chair if that's available to you. If you've got the space to do a little forward and backward bending, we're going to move into some of the spine as we move towards the neck. And if you're on the floor, if you're a floor practitioner, see if it's available to come on the hands and knees. If that's available for your wrists, for your knees, that's an option. If it isn't, get yourself on a chair and let yourself be in a sitting position for the next piece. So 2 options here, on the floor and on the back. If you're familiar with a classic cat-cow, start by warming up the spine. You've got the hips that are part of the game here. They just got a little warmer, so let the tailbone lift and lower as you move your whole body. You're only going as deeply, as intensely as it feels good. So if you feel like your low back's been really carrying that back bend, focus on the upward bend. Do that scooping movement. Give your low back that extra little stretch. You might even find some other movements in that forward bend if that feels relieving to you. Or conversely, you might find that opening back, and back bend is where your pleasure and your jam is, so you can give yourself those shapes, those movements from a traditional back and forth to warm it up, and that traditional sitting backward bend forward bend to whatever wiggle again, squiggle. Where can the spine go? Where can this body be supported and helped? As you give yourself a few more breaths and all the possibilities of the cats, we'll come into the shoulders as we approach the neck. If you're sitting on a chair, let yourself reach one arm across the upper chest and come into a little twist as you look behind you. If you're sitting in a chair, you've got this seated variation of a sleeping cat. And if you're in cat pose, if you're on the hands and knees, let a hand scoop down between the legs and the elbow to come into that twist with your orientation to the floor. So everyone's got doing kind of a similar arm across the front of the body to twist and look towards the opposite side, towards the over the shoulder. If you're on the floor, let your shoulders benefit from that. You might hang out there. You might find how soft, how surrendered, how relaxed can you make yourself. Or you might like a dynamic practice. You might have something fueling your energy and giving you these options. Around the chair, that's that. Reaching and twisting. Coming back to the center, coming back to a pause. If you are in cat pose, notice what you might need here. Some people are plenty comfortable to sit on their heels. We'll focus on the shoulders again and come into the neck. If you're comfortable that way, that's one option. You might need a little something. Some people have a cushion, a bolster that makes it more comfortable to be in a kneeling position. And if you want to try that for a few minutes and decide how it feels to adapt later, that's always a choice. This is about your comfort. So whether you're sitting on the floor on any sort of support or up in the chair, I'm going to get closer to where you can see what's happening with these upper parts of the body. So sitting up in your favorite way to sit up, fingertips to the shoulders. And let's bring the elbows forward and back a few times. Like a upper body butterfly. And that might feel like more of cat pose. That might feel like an even deeper cat pose. And you might play, if this is an old familiar thing that you do, you might mix it up a little bit. If it's new to you, get into what you're feeling. If it's something you've never done before, notice what your experience is. And if you've done it before, see how low can the elbows meet or be approached to each other. What's the low range? And then what's the high range? What are some of the upper places where the elbows can approach each other or even touch? So noticing that range of the middle, the sort of default, and then the lower down and the higher up. And you might divide it out for the next piece. You might do both together if you know it and you like it, but we're going to move from that forward and back into a circle, drawing a circle with the elbow. Letting the shoulder get its exercise here, clockwise, counterclockwise. Switching that direction. Getting a pattern here. If you've been paying attention, simple movements, round movements, and then squiggly movements. I'm going to switch over to the other side for the round movements. Finding both that forward movement and the backward movement. 2 directions, clockwise and counterclockwise. At least 3 or 4 in each direction. And if it's delicious, it's if you're like, oh, this is what my shoulders have been needing, keep doing, do a few more. Your body will tell you when that's enough. From those circles to something a little more complex, a figure 8 or an infinity symbol, sort of ribbon, fancy bow, or those farfalle pastas. With the one side, the other side, and remember there's 2 directions. There's 2 sides and 2 directions of movement. Like a law of physics, I'm pretty sure. What goes up must come down. What goes left must go right. And what goes in will go out. Coming into these shapes, and you might want to play with both of these together. If that was satisfying, let yourself rest. If you feel like you want more, keep going, keep seeing where can this give you something delicious, something pleasant. So giving those shoulders a few more moments. The arms might even rest as you find some details with shrugging one side, shrugging both sides, shrugging, rolling them back and bringing the shoulder blades down. That might even take a few repetitions to feel like you can get them to their down spot, and that opens the front of the body there, that opens the collarbone. So it might feel awkward if you spent the day at a computer, right? If you spent the day driving, if you spent the day at a table, maybe doing sewing or crafting or writing or eating, so reversing that is the invitation, is to open and bring the elbows behind the body and stretch out the front. And then come into your center, into your neutral, to continue with the head, slow motion. Oh, yes. Let the breath be a part of the movement. Let yourself be steady where you're sitting. Drop into the surface beneath as you slowly move, yes, with the head. Arrive at the center for a side bend, a little ear to the side, up and over, ear to the side. If your nose were a pencil, a paintbrush, you'd be drawing a little horseshoe, a rainbow. And you might like this simple back and forth. That might feel very nice, like, oh, this part of my body has been closed and tense. You might even add your hand if that feels good, to reach in there and give yourself a little additional self-massage, or warming those up with the intention to be nice to yourself. That's the rule, to intend kindness. And there might be some other little movements. There might be a little yes in that side bend. And keeping that within a range that feels comfortable, that feels gentle, that feels kind to your own body. As you work out these little side to side wiggles and stretches, and we'll do a couple more things with the neck. The full four movement sequence. We've done forward and back. Yes, we've done side to side. I don't know. And now you're going to twist and look over her shoulder in the slow motion. No. Setting boundaries here. Nope. There might be some things that you've been setting boundaries around, getting clear on those ways to navigate. And same thing as before, you might come to your natural edge there, your stopping point, and then, inside of that twist, there's a little yes, or there's and I don't know, there's a little wiggly wobbly, squiggly squaggly with the nose. Seeing what your neck might need in those various positions. Jaw is soft, tongue is loose. And you're giving yourself those movements and those explorations that maybe you haven't done all day, as you've been focused on a screen, on a work, on a job, or on a task. As you put these together and bring your head back to the center, we're going to finalize the neck movements with a rotation, and you might have your own deeper neck roll, and that's invited if that's what you'd like, but I'm starting quite gently and softly. Again, imagining my nose as a pencil or a paintbrush. And I'm drawing a circle right in front of me. Small, tiny small, beginning with something small as a nickel or a golf ball. And slowly expanding that small circle, going only as big as it feels good and slowing it down so that I feel everything along the way. If I were moving along the face of a clock, I'd feel every minute click, 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 click. Hopefully not clicking, but available, accessible, and smooth. Into as big of a rotation and back to a little shape and back to a small centered circle. Stillness and change direction from the stopping point into movement. Starting small, jaw loose, tongue soft. Rolling that around to the biggest size and then back to a smaller size. Oh, thank you, neck. Thank you, neck. Take a few breaths. Notice what you've done. Notice how you feel. And notice what else you might need for your well-being. We'll have about 5 minutes, I think, and I'll have some ideas. I'll give you some suggestions of what else you might do. But if you've got something that's your own, that's some piece of maybe physical therapy that you just haven't gotten to today or this week, this is your moment. Take this opportunity and do some personal practice of what you might need. And here's an idea. If you want something familiar that you maybe have done in a session with me, if you're up for bringing the body up to standing, we'll take 5 minutes and some standing practices with the option to do them in your mind if you don't feel like participating at all, and the option to do them sitting down at all. There's a focus on the upper body so the legs can be standing or they can be supported on a chair. So from your standing position, interlacing the fingers and reaching up. And here's where the warm shoulders play a big deal, because if they're tight, those shoulders are going to crawl up to the ears, but we want to keep them down and away from the head. And reaching the body lengthwise from the hips to the armpits. Upward reach. If you're standing and you want to go up on your toes, here's your opportunity, almost levitating. Heels go up. Heels come down, arms come down. They can go a couple different places. The up and the down seems to be like a pretty natural trajectory for the arms. That's one option. The other option is they can come rest on top of the head, soften in the shoulders, and then they can pump upward through the elbows and then soften, keeping the shoulders down. Lifting up onto the toes, making that a balance. Woo, making that a focus. Straight up and down. Same thing on the chair. It's about the spine. It's about finding that space between the hips and the ribs. Where can the body lengthen? Standing open and wide for a side bend coming next. Steadiness in the wide position. You might let yourself lean a little left, a little right. I like to start with the arms just hanging out passive and then engage them if they feel like it, if it feels actually beneficial, good. Maybe just a little engaged, maybe more engaged. I think a wider position is probably helpful in any variation of this practice to keep the center of balance steadier and better supported. And wherever that side bend is, there's always a possibility that it's coming into a bit of a twist. So wherever you are on your side bend, check. How are you in relation to the wall opposite? And there's no wrong way to do this. You might find something very nice from making your side bend a little bit of a forward bend. There might be an opening through the low back that might be helpful for you. But you might also find it in your twist upward, looking towards the ceiling, opening the breastbone upward. So however you're taking this, in the chair or standing up, letting yourself notice where you are in that angle, in that relationship to the wall opposite. and how it feels and what feels good, what gets the part of you open that you feel like, oh yeah, that's been folded all day and now it gets to breathe. That's what we're going for. What will feel good. From the side bend, left and right, figure out those little details in your body. Come into the middle for a final standing or sitting twist. For the twist, it prepares with the starfish, with the biggest open position, open through the fingers, open through the eyebrows, open through the toes, and then the arms wrap around the body to look behind. Great big open, yes. And we're wrapping that around. Hello and a hug from the chair. Here's where being a little further from the edge might be helpful, but if that edge is too close, could be one arm coming around, right? If that other arm doesn't quite fit back there. Finding what works, finding where there's a way, where it's available. Twisting and coming to the center. Last but not least, a backward and a forward bend. We've done some of this with the cat pose. If you wish to add an arm to bend backward, if you're sitting especially, the lifting of the arm is a backward bend in and of itself, and combining that with a forward bend with a release or a reach. From standing, the hands might support. They might be out to the sides, or they might also be part of that big opening through the armpit, through the chest. Option of both together, that's going to be more demanding, so taking it in a way that feels right to your body. Backward and forward combinations. Backward and forward. I always think of like breaking, right? Breaking something small like a credit card or something, like a little piece of wood that needs a little back, forth before it loosens up. So backward and forward, you're not breaking anything here. We're not breaking the body. We're finding that flexibility, finding that two positional nature through the hips. It's through the hips and any other part of the spine that you feel being called into this forward and backward bend to arrive at the center, to arrive at stillness. Again, I invite a moment to check in with the self and a moment to decide what is needed, what is next for your body. You might have a few more physical movements. You might have a thing that you remembered that you wish you had done. This is the moment. And I'll take the next minute or two to invite you to slow down and to wind down and to return to a place of stillness through which this is our practice. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for doing however much or little you chose to do. You are perfect. These Astroyoga classes will be taking place weekly until further notice. I hope to continue them for quite a while. And I thank you for showing up, and I welcome you in future weeks. Thank you for watching. Please like the video and leave a comment about your experience. And while you're here, please subscribe to my channel and opt in for notifications to catch the next class I upload. And then head over to olgachwa.com to join in a live event or to work one-on-one with me. I'm here to help.